camera up here rather than from the microphone down here.
Yes, I have that problem on my laptop. That I have this rather expensive and shiny mic that I call Reinhardt because it only works either at 90 degrees or straight ahead.
Yeah.
And my laptop just likes to pretend he's not there.
Right, let's see if this is. Okay, that's acceptable audio quality. I'll go for that. Okay. Do you just get straight into it?
I was about to say I've never been acceptable before. It's a good, it's a first for me.
Well, it's more mine that's because I'm using the headset mic. It's a little lower quality than the boom.
Okay,
so it's but it should be fine. Right, we're here for a little bit of a talk on the IKRPG with long-time friend of the show, John.
Hello.
Hello there, John. Now, do you want to just give us a quick background about yourself and the War Machine, or indeed the general gaming world?
Yeah, because you and I go back, oh God, an awfully long time. It's been 14 years or thereabouts. And, you know, I came into War Machine with the original Iron Kingdoms RPG, actually, the D20 one.
Oh, okay.
And then I sort of bounced sideways into the miniatures game because the bloke that got me into it said, "Hey, do you know there's a miniatures game of this?"
No. That's a really interesting path to take, because what I usually find is it's the opposite way around. So to find someone who's coming from the RPG is certainly a very interesting way to go.
I think that's definitely the way round they engineer it now. Because we're going back to the early days of Privateer Press when nobody was entirely sure they were going to last more than another 2 years, I think.
I think that state may or may not be continuing today, but go on.
I wouldn't know, because for reasons that we're going to get into probably later, I've been a little bit out of touch lately. But no, so this was back in the days of War Machine Apocalypse. So to give you an idea, the Deathjack and the first Epic Casters had only just come out.
Oh, okay. So that is way back in the old school. I mean, that's before I joined, which was kind of the death. Well, not the death. The later stages of Mark 1, where someone had a battle box tournament. I went, yeah, okay, I'll buy a battle box and be horribly slaughtered for several games. Yeah.
I think that's more or less how I got in as well. Like, you know, my mate Dave told me I had steampunk zombies, and I went, my God, yes, that's on brand. I mean, I didn't say that was on brand because I didn't have Twitter then, so I didn't have a brand to be on, but that's not the point.
Well, I think just to press home your the direction you as a person going, do you want to give people your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is Proper Gothic.
There we go.
And that's spelt with 2 Fs because we don't believe in spelling where I'm from. And I've just realized as well, I think I owe your listeners an apology, especially your listeners, because we're going so far back into the days of the oldest of the old school. I think I have to apologize for Nick. I'm pretty sure I got him started.
Oh dear, that's bad. We don't want to go into those realms. Nick, long departed from the show though he is, has actually suggested he may come back for episode 100, which is coming up fairly soon.
That is the one after this, isn't it, or something like that?
Yes, this is pre-record for episode 99.
All right, so as ever, missing the boat here. Timely as ever. Here I am.
Well, I thought this might be more time sensitive, and to be honest, the more time I have to edit something, the better, frankly.
That's fair enough. And again, yeah, for reasons that we will come into as we chat on. There is a reason we wanted to have this conversation sooner rather than later. So anyway, yeah, meandering is a thing I do a lot. Yeah, I mean, I played War Machine for about 7 or 8 years and did quite badly. And then I had a nervous breakdown, and to fund my move to the country, I sold more or less everything. But I kept enough stuff to play what was then the new version of the Iron Kingdoms role-playing game, which is the one that is still available from reasonably sized games emporia near you.
Wherever you can find it on a shelf that's near the bottom at the back of the shop with a bit of dust on it.
Yeah. And for an extremely given value of favorite, it is one of my favorite RPGs.
Oh,
Because
okay.
what it's good at, it does it does very, very well, I think.
Okay.
But what it's good at is extremely niche, and I will state that up front.
Okay, so go on, give us the pitch for why it is one of your favorite RPGs for that niche.
Okay, the specific niche is if you've got friends who play War Machine and Hordes and are sort of interested in RPGs and would like to just step sideways as smoothly as possible, the IK RPG is great for that. Because it's built off the same, it's the same world, it's built off the same rules chassis. It is basically single active agent War Machine and Hordes. You know, if you know your way around the rules of War Machine and Hordes, if you know that you don't need to boost when you charge because that comes built in, then and you know what parry does, and you can more or less remember on the third go exactly how admonition works. Admonition's still in the game. It's been a while.
Yes, admonition's still there.
Hey, I love that. I love out of sequence movement. So yeah, for people who are into their War Machine and Hordes and want to role play without the bother of learning a new system, it's chuffing great.
Okay. I mean, I will say that I haven't played extensive amounts of the IK RPG. I've played, I think, a couple of campaigns, only one to completion, if memory serves. And I will agree, it's got that good kind of, if you want a good crunchy combat system that's dealing with a heavy tabletop presence, so you're able to make things that look visually good for people because you kind of, for the system, need to know where everything is and things like that. It's not mandatory, but it's advised.
It's the only RPG I enjoy playing where even I use a grid. I don't think I could. I couldn't go pure theatre of the mind with this, and I wouldn't want to, because what it does, as you say, is the tactical combat, and it does. I've run demos of it before. I've had my other half, who's an artist, draw up some lovely grid maps for them, and they have gone down pretty dang well, I think. But I wouldn't want to do it without them, because for the stuff that's not tactical combat, it's kind of lackluster.
Yes. Now, I will say from my own experiences again, we've tried to do some social interaction stuff in there, and it seems like a lot of that stuff is very much, we care about the combat. The rest of the stuff, the GM can basically decide, just hand wave it.
Yeah, they've got some social skills somewhere you can roll for them. There might be target numbers, but it is very much in that tradition of what you need rules for is the bit you can't put on funny voices for. And I think it owes a lot of that to its heritage as a D20 RPG, because with the best will in the world, D&D has always been at heart a combat game. It's it evolved from historical wargaming. It's bolted on other stuff over the years.
Yeah.
But what it's engineered to do at its heart is kill monsters, take their stuff. And the original IK RPG was a sort of very sophisticated, overbuilt world in which you could kill monsters and take their stuff, but what their stuff would be coal, and everything would run on steam, and there were guns and no mucking around with teleporting.
Yeah. I mean, I have just picked up my my copy of the book here, which is it's actually a very nicely presented tome. If you've not seen it, it's a very nice hardback book of most of the things you'd want.
Yeah,
not all of them.
Yes, and it's got some things that I think it does exceptionally well. My favourite bit of this book, of this system, is actually the adventuring companies. Is that section sort of about 2/3 of the way through where it says, here are a bunch of reasons that all of your characters are working together. And it's not just you're all in a bar and this warcaster walks in and hires you. It's you're all in the Signaran army. You're all Trollkin and you're from the same Creel. You're all outlaws, and these particular character builds will fit in well with that concept. I wish it put that up front before the character generation. And
it is kind of. I've presumably always missed that bit on the way through, but it's very much that kind of boil in the bag. Here's the start of your adventure. You work it out from here.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I do like that it hands over a premise for the characters to all know each other, so that you can. If it was up the front, you'd do that in your session 0. You'd get everyone together. You'd pick a sort of a guild, for want of a better word, and then you'd build characters that fit in with that. And it avoids that sort of. The consequence of doing it the other way round is that sometimes the poor GM, like what I am, has to fit together. Let's think now. A rogue but still nominally loyal Stormsmith with absolutely no sense of self-preservation or a real grasp on how not to pass out from too much lightning throwing. A sticky-fingered human who acts like a gobber and is a gobber in all possible ways except actually being one.
Okay. Interesting party so far.
Yeah. And a sort of punch-drunk retribution of Cyrard double agent, and a Scorn. A Scorn anything would be difficult enough, but if I say Scorn Annihilator...
Yeah, that's... No.
Yeah, that's
no.
what... So, it has a system to avoid that. It's just that people don't always notice it because it doesn't lead with that. Wish it did. And as you say, it does then hand you here is the start of your campaign and a context for your adventures. Have fun. But what I think it's done badly, and this goes for both iterations of the IKRPG over the years, is it ain't been too hot at the actual adventures that it gives you. The stuff in No Quarter, and I mean sort of the early No Quarters, back when I was buying it from a shop in Wolverhampton that I think has since been closed down for selling drugs and ammunition out the back.
Oh, okay. Classy establishment then.
Wolverhampton, what are you going to do?
Yeah, true. I did work there for 5 years.
Exactly. You know what it's like.
Yeah.
I got sidetracked there thinking about Wolverhampton, which happens to me a lot. It's the flashbacks. I'm taking meds for it, but what are you going to do?
Oh, believe me, I have the very same thing when I think back to all the schools I had to work in there, and oh boy, it took me a long time to get over that job.
I did private tuition in Wolverhampton, so yeah, I've seen it coming the other way.
Fair play to you. Fair play to you.
Anyway,
let's get back
my CV was not the topic of conversation here. The topic of conversation here was No Quarter and the early No Quarters, which were really, really decent at providing adventures for the IKRPG. Yeah, they put out every month. They put out, here's an NPC we've built, and so, here's an adversary we've built and some backstory. See if you can slot her in somewhere. Here's rules, and here's a fluff article and some rules and a couple of adventure hooks for a Warjack that we've just released for the miniatures game. Or something, sometimes they do a proper adventure path. There's Smoke on the Water, the one that's set on a steamboat going very, very slowly down the Dragon's Tongue, is pretty decent. And what they mostly did was, what Edge was doing later on was tactical combat encounters. But just picked a monster from the Monsternomicons and said, right, here is a really fleshed out and cranchily encounter where you can really have fun with everything this does. And the one they did for the Sturge Flock is still one of my favorite encounters. But then there's this jump between an encounter and an actual adventure, and with the exception of Smoke on the Water and the one that's set just outside Five Fingers, they ain't been so good at this. The Witchfire trilogy. Have you ever played the Witchfire trilogy?
No, I haven't. I would say I do own a copy. It's with Nick, and has been now for 6 years.
Yeah.
Because we exchanged things at one point, and it's like, oh yeah, I still have your book on Arthur, so you still have my Witchfire trilogy. We should get those back at some point. Yeah, let's never do that. Okay. Yeah.
And to be brutally honest, you've saved yourself reading a mediocre fantasy novel disguised as a D&D adventure. It's the worst kind of frustrated novelism, because your PCs are just playing second fiddle to Sabrina the Teenage Necromancer for the whole thing.
Right, okay. I mean, I gathered from what it necessarily has to set up, where that story has to go, the only thing I can think of is it would have to be tremendously railroady just to get you to the right place.
God, like, you can tell why they put a train on the cover of the rule book, because this thing runs on rails.
Oh, okay. Yep.
I'm not kidding when I say it's not even a choose your own adventure. It's a novel where you get to roll dice as you go along.
Oh, that's not my favorite kind of thing, I'm afraid.
And as as a way to sort of launch the concept of the Iron Kingdoms and to set up the recent history and to give a feel for what the world is like, the actual story ain't too bad.
Yeah.
It's just a dreadfully designed adventure. And I don't think any iteration of the IKRPG has ever quite nailed the jump from here's an encounter that works really well to here's a joined up reason to have a bunch of these joined up.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, the IKRPG has always kind of it bothers me on multiple levels.
You did say when I proposed that we talk to each other again after so many years of doing this, you did say you had some beef here. So
I mean, it's not technically huge beef. My major problem is it's a really good system. It's just not the system I want. It's really good doing combat encounters, but my idea of a combat encounter is if it's taking more than half a session, you need to like get the saw out and just go, no, let's just cut off the rest of this. Let's get it out the window. It's one of those things I hate in RPGs where you get stuck in like one moment of time for 4 hours, and then you go, and next week we'll find out who hits who next.
I know what you mean. It speeds up if you've got a GM that knows it well, but that's not really a redemption of the system so much as praise for your GM at the end of the day.
Plus, what I would say is the groups I work with, they're very much more the kind who they like to get the descriptive version of things. So where the Iron Kingdoms RPG is, I move 4 inches forwards, I have 2 inches of reach, I hit you on a 7. They want to know, just they don't care too much about the positions. It's like, yeah, you charge in and you're going to swing. Okay, you can roll these dice. Okay, you've hit him. You're doing this, and just kind of powering through it without having that models on a table kind of thing. They're not those kind of groups.
Yeah, and that's the dark side of it being War Machine and Hordes, the RPG, and that's why I don't get to run it very often, because by nature, I skew hard story gamer like you. It's just that there is this part of me that really gets off on a tactical combat simulator, and sometimes I just really want to play War Machine and Horde without going out and painting 30 Bane Knights.
To be honest, the IKRPG would probably be an absolutely fantastic backing for an Iron Kingdoms version of Mordheim.
Yes.
That seems to me where it would be really comfortable just having 5 or 6 models per side on the table and working out progression through campaigns and stuff like that, so that you don't have to have that adventuring bit in the middle that it really kind of glosses over and says, this bit's not really important, the GM can decide. Just
or I mean, I would compare it almost to Frostgrave, which if I remember rightly, because Frostgrave's got a co-op mode, if I remember rightly. It's not played that much, but the idea of a cooperative miniatures game is something that I know has been explored here and there by various bold experimental souls, and I think that's what the IKRPG really is.
Well, Frostgrave was very much developed as, they're not working on Mordheim anymore. What can we do that's in the same area but more?
Yeah, although interestingly enough, other attempts at doing something like this, I mean, because there's always that sort of slight danger with just kind of adapting a territory that Workshop isn't really occupying anymore, because there are some unkind people who say that's all War Machine and Hordes is, that it's 2nd edition 40k done over.
I mean, I can see where they're coming from. I don't necessarily agree with them.
I don't think that's true anymore. I think it might have been true of Mark 1. but that was a long time ago.
Yes, there's a lot more elements in Mark 1 that you could probably relate back to. Yes, I will. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was pitched to me on the grounds that you are old enough to have played second edition 40k, and you remember when dreadnoughts had special attacks where they could rip chunks off each other. How would you like it if they did wrestling moves? And I think I said, "Is there a headlock?" And I was told, not only can you headlock someone, but you can punch them repeatedly in the head while you're doing it.
Amusingly enough, all gone now.
Yeah. I gather this. Like, I should probably come out and say this, that part of the reason that this has been a kind of a comeback tour for you and me is that although we're still mates, I haven't played War Machine since just before Mark III dropped. Partly because I went temporarily insane and didn't really want to leave the house very often, but mostly because I looked at Mark III. And the fact that it opened with the legalese, it opened with sort of the definitions of what was within and what was completely within, and it sort of that quibble fodder. And I looked at that and I went, okay, the game I love is in here somewhere, but it has finally become what it was threatening to become for years, which is a theatre of rules.
I can't say it's inaccurate.
Yeah. And I don't hate that. Like if that's what you want, good on you. It's something that I only want in small doses. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. It's very much a system that I've kind of I do look at certain of my friends and go, you'd probably enjoy it. It's very crunchy, and you'd sit there and work out the stats and how things are going to go. You, on the other hand, not so much, because you'll just go by feel, and it's very much not a that's about right kind of game. It's very much a I will move here and here alone.
Yeah, and I've seen it slide from from the second state you described into the first state you described. Because again, the very first No Quarter I ever picked up had the ultimate spirit of wargaming, according to Duncan Huffman in the front. And I will always remember one of the points on that was don't quibble about millimeters in a game of inches. And with the best will in the world, I've never met anyone quite like a War Machine player for being so into quibbling about millimeters that they have special custom-sized movement measurers that clip onto all of their bases and laser lines.
So, at the risk of going tremendously off topic,
off topic?
Yes, I'm going to describe for you what I have repeatedly called the most miserable game of War Machine I have ever had the displeasure of watching. Now, this was at the Welsh Masters about 2-3 years ago. And I rocked up to the table. It's Retribution facing another faction. It's not really important who it was, but the other faction goes first, moves forwards, and basically they were in a position where something was just about possible. Time gets past the Retribution player, and he goes, "Okay, I will warn you, this turn is going to take about 45 minutes. Oh, I can see you now. That's very nice.
I put this on so that you can see my face when I react to this story, because I think that's going to be important.
Fair enough.
Let me just angle this. Oh, no, wait, I can't angle this because I've broken my computer. Sorry, carry on with the story, mate.
So the guy says, okay, I will warn you, it's going to take about 45 minutes for me to do this. And at the end, I will have either won the game or I will have lost the game. Like, okay, fair enough. And I stood there going, I have a bad feeling about this. This is the point at which he basically empties a dump truck of acrylic pieces on the table. And he starts, it's like, okay, so this unit has to move first, and gets out individual measuring sticks for each of them to say, this one has to move 6 forward, this one 5, this one 8, this one 4, and just kind of, okay, so then puts proxy bases at the points where all of them will end up, starts measuring from there as well, then measures where his caster's got to be for this, then measures where a warjack's got to be. At the point where he even got close to touching a single model, he had burnt 25 minutes of the clock. His opponent was basically head in hands, almost snoring across the table.
I'm imagining a face very like the one I'm pulling in those hands.
And he has no fewer than 16 proxy bases on the table and 30 measuring sticks. He then proceeds to go, okay, let's do this. Moves the first model into position, rolls the dice, misses, leans over the table, shakes his opponent's hand and says, "Good game, I've lost."
Play a fucking computer game.
And I sat there just thinking, just move the models. You've still got half an hour left. What is going on in your head that you've said, well, I've moved one model, that's clearly everything done?
It's chess. It's that chess-like mindset.
Yeah.
Because War Machine does attract the chess player mentality, I think. That's because especially with the fact that it's become a more and more precise order of activation game than ever. I'm going to turn the camera off now so that I can actually sit up straight.
That's fair enough. You have a nice relax, or at least what you can.
Yeah. Oh, oof. Oof. A series of unpleasant crunching sounds in the background. Okay. Yep. Yeah, War Machine does attract that sort of chess playing mentality. And it's sort of part of me sort of says, just play a bloody computer game. You clearly need the level of precision that you get when a machine is handling all of this for you. And part of me also says, the great thing about an RPG is that I think if it's not competitive, there's not that same sort of... People are more willing to take risks when everyone around the table's on the same side.
Yes. And one of my great pleasures in any RPG, I mean, I will put forward, I like DMing a lot, generally a lot more than I enjoy playing, because I love sitting there and listening to all. You get the full range of plans. You get the people who are there going, yes, I think we should do this logical next step. But then you've got that one player off in the corner who's like the demon on the shoulder who says, yeah, but what if we did this instead? And all of a sudden, all the heads turn round and go, that's crazy, but it sounds interesting. Like in my last campaign, it was a Shadowrun campaign, which I will not go into my foibles with that system. But
do it later when it's just you and me.
Yes. But
I did not mean to make that sound as erotic as I did. I'm sorry.
But the players are there, kind of thinking, okay, how do we assault this facility? We might need to go in by this route, or we could wait for the change of shifts. And one player went, "I'm bored of planning. We're in San Francisco. There's a naval base. I wonder if they have any military equipment." We're like, okay. And off he toddles to this military base, rolls stupidly well to get in there, manages to find an APC with a heavy machine gun on top, and basically just drives it straight through the rest of the campaign. Like, okay, that was unexpected. You do you. I'm perfectly happy with this result.
Yeah, and those moments are great. That's so. I mean, the dynamic that you describe is exactly how my last IKRPG game tended to go down. Because this is one of the rare occasions when I was playing, because I usually end up GMing partly because I get bored when I only have one person to run and I can't be the whole world, and also because of Stevie's first law of RPGs, which is whoever had the idea ends up doing all the work.
In fairness, you also have the beard and glasses for a GM.
Are they part of the kit? I didn't realise.
So they do come as standard. Your first sign is obviously, yes, if you suggest the RPG, you are running the RPG. But the second stage is apparently the beard and glasses.
See, I haven't developed the beard. I woke up like this on my 17th birthday, and it explains so much.
You woke up as a level 2 GM.
But so the player dynamic that has ended up that appeared in my last group was you have right. My friend Charles plays the Stormsmith that I mentioned earlier. It's one of the legion of characters that Charles has created. You send Charles off to make one character, they come back with a family of 6.
Oh wow.
There's no stopping this one when the bit is between the teeth. And Charles is very much a do it by feel kind of person. So you present but they also love the unfolding machinery of a plan that ramps up. A simple plan in Charles's hands will become this convoluted right. So we burn 2 fear scrolls on getting them to run over here into the line of demo charges that we've set, which will blow up the wall that holds back the underground river, thereby drowning everybody in the room. I, on the other hand, like a simple plan well executed, and I ain't really one for details. And I tend to play Charles's long-suffering bodyguard. It's the role that Charles gravitates to casters who get themselves into trouble. I gravitate to long-suffering warriors who have to drag them out of it. Think Minsk and Dynahire from Baldur's Gate, except that except the fighter's the marginally more sensible one.
Very nice.
Oh, and that's that's the great part about running games up to a point. And the point that I don't like it getting up to is the point where they're trying to foolproof everything because they are used to the adversarial GM. The kind of person who will sit there, and this is a true story that I've heard from someone. Like, I tend to rehabilitate players a lot when I run games. Someone will come in and say, I've had a bad experience with this because of that. I hate Vampire the Masquerade because somebody came into it on a power trip and just dominated everybody in the party willy-nilly and turned us all into meat puppets. Yeah. Problematic on many levels.
Yeah.
This wasn't as bad as that, but this was somebody who'd come into my IKRPG game, and what they were used to was and they were asking me, right, so I've got a gun. Where do I keep my bullets? In a bandolier or a pouch? And how does that impact my reload times? And I said, does it really matter that much? And this chap related to me the story of how his previous DM had waited half a session until the party had set out into the icy whiteness of the tundra, and then said, imagine this in a sort of slightly more Polish version of this, because that's where the group were from. I can't help but notice that none of you have entered clothing on your character sheets. I'm forced to presume that you've gone out into the wilderness bollock naked, and it's about this time that you've all frozen to death. Time to roll up some new characters, please.
That is the point at which I would grab that GM by the lapels and throw them out of a window.
Yeah. I don't generally advocate casual violence around the gaming table, but that's definitely the point at which I would leave and never come back.
Yeah. I mean, for some people, they like that sort of very precise GM who has, if it's not there, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
For me, my opinion is, okay, you have some bullets. When it is important to the storyline that I'm telling, or if you roll stupidly badly, then you'll run out.
Yeah, that's it. Running out of bullets and not being able to reload in time, that's a fumble.
Yeah.
That's not something that I feel you need to be beating and tracking every time. But the thing is, it's not so much a difference in styles, it's the mentality behind it that I couldn't stand. That's sitting there waiting and letting them waste 2 hours of their time and then dropping it.
Yeah.
And that kind of adversarial GM mindset leads people to over-plan and over-prepare and ask for a level and sort of ask questions, which is great in a player, but to ask questions in a level of detail that is just obvious that they have sat there and for 10 minutes and wrestled this sentence until it leaves no possible room for ambiguity, surprise, or missed detail. Order of the Stick did the great riff on this with the Oracle, but sort of the two stated locations, these being Girard's Gates and Lyrian's Gates, of these two locations, they're going on about trying to find Zycon and which of those two gates is he going to first. And they just have this ridiculously long and complex sentence that's designed to eliminate any double talk, any tricks or non-answers whatsoever. And there are 3 gates. And he's going to the third one. And even the NPC is sat there going, are you sure you don't want to just ask me which gate Zycon's going to next? But the player characters there, their players have obviously been victims of that kind of fuckery before.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of that kind of fuckery. And it's not particularly, like, for the average GM who doesn't have the time or the patience to lovingly research every last moving part of a scenario and who cannot conjure up, okay, yes, I know exactly how much it should cost to get hold of 6 black market AK-47s on Jewish New Year in the rain in San Francisco. The kind of
were you at my last campaign? That was set in San Francisco.
I think that's why I said San Francisco.
Oh,
I pay attention, you see.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so like, unless you're the kind of GM who has sat down and painstakingly worked out the fluctuating price of leather in your world and how this affects armor availability, chances are you just don't have an answer for that. And then you've got to sit there and think of one. And different GMs have different levels of difficulty with this. I, as one of nature's improvisers, I don't like to plan too much because I find that whenever I plan something, the session ends up going in a completely different direction anyway. I like to turn up. I like the players to turn up, and I ask them, so what do you losers want to do today?
Yeah.
And kind of wing it from there.
Oh,
but
I'll just tell you quickly about my last campaign. So essentially what I did, the first campaign we had was kind of from a Star Wars RPG book, and it had definite paths. You could go things in multiple orders, but it had definite paths.
Mm-hmm.
The last campaign I ran, I'd written a beginning. I'd worked out multiple places where it might end, and a couple of beats that we might hit in the middle somewhere.
Things you personally want to see happen, yeah?
Yeah. But other than that, I walked in with a bag of meeples, a wipe-dry board so that I could draw some stuff if I needed to, and some file cards, and a big file of random company, location, and person names. And basically let the players have at it. If they went to a location, it was their choice of where they were going. It wasn't pre-suggested. And I kind of created something on the fly and added a new bit to the story. It meant that there were some dead ends that they didn't follow up on, but it also meant that there were things that appeared later in the campaign that linked back to earlier things that they were like, did you plan this all along? Like, no, I'm making this stuff up.
Yes, that's the reaction that I love. The bit where they think you're some sort of criminal mastermind when what you've actually been doing is just paying attention to what they say and do. And if they've decided that somebody is the big bad, if they've taken a particular dislike to the Prince of the City because they don't like his accent or something, then guess what? That's the bad guy now.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, it did lead to this awful mess of file cards that at one point I was just like, hang on a second, I need to find who that character was again. There we go. But
good system, though.
Yeah, it led to. I mean, this is after a conversation I had at a convention with some other GMs where I said, "Do you think it's better to over prepare or under prepare?" And the guy on stage, who, for a moment, I could have sworn he was a clone of you, basically said, "That is the best question we've had. Also know that I hate you."
Yeah, that does sound like something I would say.
Yeah.
Not just to you either. This isn't personal.
But anyway, we've kind of had a mosey on about the IK RPG system. Personally, I'd say if you've played War Machine and you've never tried an RPG, it's going to probably be a decent in for you, or something you might want to try. Availability is a little bit mixed at the moment, but yeah, I think that's kind of my feelings on it. It's not your worst introduction to the world of role playing, and if you've never role played before, I'd suggest you do try at some point. But I know that you also came on to talk about a personal project as well.
I did. Thank you very much for this opportunity for a shameless plug.
I'm segueing sort of neatly into the area you're looking for.
I'm kind of glad that we've talked about a lot of the stuff that we have, because, this does... It's like we planned this. We don't. We made it up as we went along. But we've talked about the IK RPG and the things... And the one thing that it doesn't do particularly well, which is sort of contexts for the tactical combat that it does. It's good at putting you in an organization. It's not so good at getting that organization into a situation. And we've talked about preparation and over-preparing and under-preparing. And we've talked about planning. And we've talked about DM styles. And here's the thing. Earlier this year, I found myself running, for the first time ever, a sort of Thieves Guildy type game. For a bunch of Warhammer... It was a Warhammer Fantasy roleplay game. But they all happened to be criminals.
Okay.
And the thing about criminals is, criminals like to steal stuff. They like to pull off, they like to pull off heists, which means they like to know what the stuff is and how well defended the stuff is and what the risks are on the road to getting the stuff and what's the best way of getting into the building at this, that, or the other time of day. All the stuff which, at the best will in the world, I am not actually that great at thinking up, particularly not on the fly, which is how I tend to end up thinking of this stuff. And the kind of RPG book that I always think needs to exist is not more monsters and more classes, but it's more scenarios and more meta and more advice, more stuff that plugs into your game and says, right, you're having this specific problem, this book can help you with that. And that's why I'm working on the San Gennaro Co-op's Big Book O Heists, the role player's guide to heists.
Okay.
Because this is the kind of book that I really need, because I'm so bad at planning them. And it's like, I joined the San Gennaro Co-op almost at the start. It's this sort of diffuse group of indie RPG creators who are all making stuff together, 100% creator owned, 100% profit shared. No IP holder is paying for their fourth yacht or second holiday.
Yeah.
Of this one. All the money goes back to the people who will actually make the things, which is really great considering how bad the wages for jobbing RPG devs are. They're appalling, Mike.
I mean, I kind of gathered.
If you follow me, if you do follow me on Twitter, brace yourself for at least a twice weekly rant about how badly RPG makers are paid, especially compared to the cover price of the books and compared to writers in proper grown-up industries that actually value their talent.
Okay.
And that's sort of then fixing that, correcting that, is why the San Gennaro Co-op exists. And one of the things that we like to do is to do stuff that other companies don't. You can get core rule books for tie-ins and systems and settings all over the place. But good setting-neutral books of stuff to do in them are quite hard to come by.
Yeah.
And so that's, so our first big Kickstarter project, our sort of tentpole, is this guide to heists. And it's 25, at least 25, system-neutral, more or less setting neutral heist scenarios. Some of them are for specific genres. There's one that's like a wizard did it, that is very much, it's written as a high fantasy thing. You could twist it sideways into urban fantasy or maybe even Star Wars, like a Jedi did it, with a bit of creative thinking. A lot of them will adapt sideways into stuff that's kind of generically next to what they were written for. It's also got about half a dozen proposed chapters of meta advice on actually running heists and building heists into your campaign. The bit I'm doing is speaking as a person who is rubbish at heists but loves a heist as the spark of a story. I love Guy Ritchie movies. And so what I'm basically doing is, here's how you run a Guy Ritchie movie.
Okay.
And it has to start with a heist, but what really matters is the characters who are involved in it. And that was sort of my pitch that got me into writing for this.
I've got to say, I'm just looking at the Kickstarter right now, which, by the looks of it, has already funded.
Yeah. Oh God.
Yep.
Masters of comic timing. We launched this thing on Free RPG Day when half the industry was at Origins and completely knackered. We still funded in 3 days flat. There is
very nice.
Clearly an appetite for this stuff out there. And the digest that we did was pretty much the same thing. We sold about 180 copies. No, we sold about 120 copies on the first day, which for a no-name indie developer is what just happened there. Yeah.
I've got to say, I do like the sort of there's a mock-up of the book on the page in that sort of very well, it's a blueprint style. I've got to say that's a very nice look. It's not one you see too often.
We wanted to do something. We wanted to do something a bit innovative, just to get away from kind of 2 columns of text for absolutely everything. And we've got some people in the co-op who are very, very good at layout, very inventive with it, very passionate about it, and who've said, they want this thing to be aesthetically different. And I can't remember now whose idea it was, but some bright spark said, well, this is all about planning, so we should make them plans. We should make them blueprints. And that's kind of what's happening now.
I've got to say that's really working for you. I mean, off the top of my head, I kind of, because you're saying this is setting neutral.
Yep.
Off the top of my head, I'm sat there thinking, there's a guy I know who actually may be really interested in this because he wanted to run Blades in the Dark, if you know that
I
RPG.
do know Blades in the Dark. I kind of wish I was running it instead of Woofrup 4, but that's another story.
He wanted to run Blades in the Dark, but he said, I'm not really confident enough to actually create the kind of thing that would be the heist. So something like this may well be the kind of confidence boost he needs to actually get that off the ground.
Yeah, that's who it's for. It's for people who want to run this kind of, not genre, but almost sort of archetype of a story, who want to tell this kind of story, run this kind of scenario, but who do not quite have, as you say, the experience or the confidence, or sometimes just the spark of the initial idea to make it go. They know, they know why they want to do it, but the details elude them, and that's the whole point of doing this book. And I run into people so often who are very into a setting and a game and a set of lore, but they fall down on knowing exactly what to do with it and how to breathe life into it and make it go. And that's what this book is. That's the sort of thing that I want to be writing. As through my brilliant career in independent games design, of one of 3 side gigs, which when you put them together just about amount to a living. That's the sort of thing I want to be doing. Is kind of I don't want to go out there and make another game, because with the best one in the world, there's loads of them out there. Chances are there's something that you like already. What I want to do is help people get more mileage and more fun and less work out of the games that they already have.
Yeah,
that's why I like doing things like this.
Well, I would say just sort of from a quick look here, for anyone who wants to have a look, and if you're in the role-playing sphere, it's an interesting one to have a look at. Just Google the Role Player's Guide to Heists, and it should be from the San Gennaro Co-op.
Hashtag RPG2Heists on the Twitter.
Okay, see, you've already got your social medias in order then.
I was shouted at and told to use that hashtag a lot.
Fair enough. And also, from what I can see, it's pretty reasonably priced, actually. So there's a PDF copy for around about $10 or £8, or you can have the premium hardcover for, was it £24 plus shipping?
Yep.
Oh, which actually includes a PDF copy as well.
Yep, and the reason we've done it that way is we've set it up so that there is a hardship tier, because I know loads of people who, with the best will in the world, cannot go out there and drop 45 knicker on an RPG book.
Yeah.
And those people, they want to buy things, they want to support creators, but they cannot afford to pay the publishers' prices that pay for the publisher's $1.5 million mansion.
Yeah.
Themselves. So, again, because we don't have anybody creaming off the top, we can say, well, guess what? We still get paid, even if you pay a bit less for a PDF copy. So here, this is on us. You can have some resources. We've got to charge for the PD. We've got to charge for the print version because that thing costs.
Yeah. But, the print is never simple. Yeah. But you also got very interesting stretch goals.
Yes, stretch goals.
Which actually do entail paying your writers and artists and editors.
Yes, paying them more. We've already set a really, really good base rate. Like I whinged earlier about the RPG industry not paying the same kind of money as writers in proper grown-up industries get. Not so here. This project pays everybody the kind of money I get in my day job, which is really... I'm not minted, but it's respectable. It's 5 times as much what I get working for a lot of mid-tier RPG publishers. And yeah, the first stretch goal is basically, guess what? We're going to pay everybody that little bit more. Because what that does is, if you pay something like, I'm going to sort of channel, I'm going to channel some of our senior members here. Give me a second. If you pay an RPG creator, say, I've sat and worked out this morning, if you pay someone $60 to write 3,000 words, they do like that's not an amount that means they can sit down and properly research and play test and think out and redraft this, because that's for the amount of writing that needs to be done. That's the kind, for that kind of money, it's just right. I'll do it, but I'll bang it out in an afternoon and not think about it too hard. Whereas you pay somebody $250, all of a sudden you've given somebody that's a good chunk of my rent for the month. I'm going to take a week off work to write my chapter for this, and I'm going to research it, and I'm going to play test the ideas at least once, probably more. And it's just, considering how much stuff gets rushed out of the gate by people that just need to turn it around so they can get on and do something that's going to make them a bit more money. This is the sort of benchmark. This is what's going to bring up the benchmark of quality in the industry. If you pay for it, we've got time to do it properly.
Yeah, I mean, I do think. Now, I'm going to set my stall out here briefly. Just, I've complained about Kickstarter a lot, sort of, over the last couple of years, because it's been used as kind of
a glorified pre-order system by people who don't need it.
Yes, by big companies. This is the sort of stuff that I'm much happier to not only see but also fund on Kickstarter and Indiegogo and BackerKit and whatever platform du jour is, because this is genuinely something that's it's working into a niche. It's people who just want to kind of make something out for themselves, and who are looking to do something that's a little bit different.
And we're actually independent as well. It's not like there's hundreds of thousands of venture capital money floating around in the air that are going to pay us to do this anyway. At the end of the day, it's sort of Kickstarter exists so that people who don't have the starting capital can make stuff.
Yeah,
here we are.
Yeah. No, okay, I'll be honest. That actually is a very interesting sort of product you're putting forward. I
like the stretch. I like as well. If we look at the rewards here, I really like the one where people get to people basically get to design a heist. If you pay a writer's wages for the project.
With the heist builder.
Yeah. If you pay a writer's wages for the project, we'll sit down and we'll write whatever heist you want. And we've got some really cool stuff coming in from that backer tier. Like, I thought the baseline ones were good, but one of our first major backers said, well, as it happened, the goddess Freya had such tight security that Loki himself had to turn into a fly in order to breach it. And that's going in the book. Mythic. I never thought of that. That's going in. And it's really nice to see people getting behind it and suggesting these things and saying, yeah, I want this to exist, and I want somebody who's got the time and has got the interest and has now got the money to flesh this out and share this. That's awesome.
I mean, I will say all the house builders are sadly gone. So
I mean, you say that, and never say never. We've got an exciting decision-making process, so that may change at some point.
Okay, but I would recommend anyone who's kind of interested in RPGs and wants maybe something a little bit different. Personally, I have a bit of a rep amongst our RPG group for running heists, because for me that's kind of the quickest way to get people into it, get them thinking, get them moving, and just kind of trundling along. It's also the best way to kind of get disparate parties together very quickly. In my experience, anyway. I don't know about yourself.
It works a hell of a lot better than you all have a grudge against X for various reasons.
Or, 12 people wander into a bar. Suddenly, an RPG party occurs.
I mean, at least when I pull something that cheap, it's you all wake up in prison.
Oh, that's working dangerously close to an event that happened at Games Expo, and we'll not go there.
Yeah, no. I should like to point out at this point that I'm purely referring to the demo game I ran at SmogCon a few years ago, where because I had a Scorn army, the antagonist had to be Scorn. So guess what? You wake up in a cage in a Scorn camp. Get out.
That's fair. As rapid setups go for, like, I need this RPG running in 5 minutes. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Okay. So is there any kind of other aspect of the Kickstarter that you'd like to kind of extol?
Only that I think one of the stretch goals down the line is just we write more heists.
Yes. So it says here, if we get more than $17,000 for every, we'll start offering additional heists in the book, and for every $600, you'll get a new one for a maximum of 10 additional heists.
Yeah. So so basically it can go to 35 scenarios.
So
depending on how well it funds.
Is the 25 that it starts with including the ones from the heist builder, or is it 25 plus 5 and then plus another 10? Or?
That's a good question, and honestly, off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I think. Hold on, mate. You know what I'll do? I will pop up the working board and I will tell you.
See, I like to ask the interesting questions.
You do like to ask the interesting questions, and I hate you. But it's okay because I can look this up if my Trello was going to load in a timely manner. So, Mike, fill for a bit, would you, while this fails to load?
Well, I would tap dance, but quite frankly, my knees aren't what they used to be. Yeah, that's very, very true.
Why have I been logged out of this? What? I'm prepared for this. That's the worst part. It's just, this is the kind of question that I really should have an answer for. I think it's 25 base, and then the heist builders are extras, but let me confirm that.
Well, I mean, as a base of 25.
Yeah, it's definitely the baseline for the book is 25, and you're going to get 25 now that it's funded.
So
I think the heist backers were included there. That we'd pitched about 15 to 20 within the co-op, and then we'd said, right, let's make this let's take it up to 25 if people have cool ideas.
Well, just as a kind of as a baseline thing, looking at your costing, if you're going in for that hardcover copy, you're basically paying $1 per heist plus an extra $5 for a hardback cover and then shipping. Which, to be honest, as a value prospect, I'm kind of into that. Because I've seen far worse value than $1 to get a heist.
Can't say fairer than that, can you?
Yeah. So the Kickstarter runs until, well, it runs for 25 days. So Monday, July the 15th at 4:59 British summertime. 4:59 p.m.
Yes, post-meridian.
Yes. So, okay, certainly very interesting prospect. I've got to say, I'll certainly be bringing that way of at least one of my friends.
Excellent,
because I know they'll be very interested in that.
Yeah. And please, I mean, even if you are like my colleague, Mr. Chom here, quite good at coming up with your own heists, I guarantee you know someone who isn't.
Plus, it's always nice to have extra inspiration. Even if you've got the book and you've read it like 1,000 times, you think you've kind of got an idea for the next thing. It's always nice to have something else to dip into, someone else's opinion to look at and go, "Ooh, that's an interesting thing." You might not even steal the whole heist. You might go, "Actually, I'll just take that little bit there."
Yeah,
that works.
And I frequently find myself having to run demo games or con games and thinking, right, I've got a system, I've got some resources. I just need something that's gonna go when I sit down to run it.
Yeah,
and that's another thing that I think this is perfect for. When you don't, if you are having to put together, for whatever reason, you've got to put together a session on the fly. That's what books like this are great for. And I find that a lot of RPGs presume the campaign, presume that you've got time to sit down and do a small novel's worth of prep beforehand. And with the best one in the world, ain't no one got time for that. So
I tried that with one RPG, and I still have that design document. A lot of it went unused during the campaign. I'll put it that way. So much as I love that setting, it's like a kind of, imagine the film Congo, but with skeletons.
Okay.
It's that kind of like slightly terrible 90s action movie set on a remote island that's the last outpost of a sort of an advanced Aztec civilization.
And there are skeletons.
Yes, because at the end you find an Olmec jade death mask that the main villain is supposed to put on so that he can control the dead. The unfortunate thing is the French acrobatic midget in the party decided to roll to see if he could get between the big bad and the death mask, which he did. So it was at that point that I kind of handed him a piece of paper that I had, and he went, "You were prepared for this, weren't you?" Like, "Oh yes, enjoy." As he then realized he had the power to raise skeletons, and he could either choose to resist or give in to the mask. It basically ended up with this French acrobatic midget with a crowbar stuck between him and the mask because it was kind of sucking onto his face, charging round like a tiny rhinoceros, aiming at crotches.
Now, see, if he'd just put that mask on and accepted his destiny as a true Lord of the Undead, you would be describing my Neverwinter Nights character.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Well, I think that pretty much about wraps up for this little segment. Unless there's kind of anything further you want to kind of expand upon.
I don't think so. I think we've had a lovely chat about an often neglected corner of the War Machine and Hordes universe. We've talked about the specific thing it's not good at and how I've made a thing that can make it better at that. Well, I've helped make a thing. It's cooperative. One mustn't claim all the credit.
I was going to say there's a very nice list of credits, and you're doing your very best Terry Pratchett without a hat.
I didn't have the hat that day. There was only so much room in my luggage.
Terrible. Anyway, thank you, John, for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure having a chat with you.
Always. Peace out.
There we go.
Nice.
That's a little segment. We're recording the rest of the episode next Wednesday because we're doing a sort of post lock and load thing.
Oh, cool. I wish I could have been around to actually do that. It's just next Wednesday, ironically enough, I'm in Manchester, not pulling off a heist, but pulling off a convoluted series of actions. It's my annual review for my PhD, so I have to justify that I'm allowed to stay at the institution for another year.
Oh, okay.
It'll be easy peasy piddle and pie because I've done a lot. And like I can point to this damn book and say, look, I'm already working in the target industry. I'm doing outreach.
Nice.
This is what we're for, isn't it? My PhD is game studies, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm literally doing a doctorate in taking RPGs too seriously.
I very much approve. Yeah.
Thought you might.
Yeah.
Oh god. The only thing that I wish I'd not, I couldn't work. I didn't want to get it in there because it's just another let me tell you about my campaign story, and the dwarf was funnier. I didn't want to try and top your dwarf story, so I just went with the Neverwinter Nights riff. But that reminds me of the first IKRPG session of the new one that I played was a demo at SmogCon. Do you remember the SmogCon where I slept on the floor in the dealer's room because I couldn't afford a hotel room? Last one in Guildford.
Oh, no, first one in Guildford.
First one in Guildford. Yeah, first one in Guildford. I slept on the floor in the dealer's room. I also got your con crud and spent the Sunday as a sort of flu zombie trying to play the Hydra tournament.
Okay. That sounds delightful.
That was a great weekend. But I did get to play the character, like Lewis, who was running it, he handed out the characters and he said, right, he knew me of old because we'd had some brief encounters on the internet, I think. And he said, right, what I've got here for you is Hlaeli's alchemist of criminal inclinations. You're basically a third-rate Batman villain. So I played him as I played him as the Cesar Romero Joker, but with an outrageous Hlaeli's accent.
Okay.
The end of this, the MacGuffin there was a Thamerite statue that somehow ended up in the inner linings of my cloak. And I've been joking about betraying the group for the whole session. They're all penned up behind a portcullis that's dropped. I am facing the head of the Thamerite cult alone. I have two objects of similar size in my coat, one of which is the statue, one of which is an acid bomb to which I'm immune because I'm wearing full alchemist tot.
Okay.
And they sat there for about 5 minutes just waiting. Like, as he did this, Lewis did this wonderful spiel about how everything you've ever wanted, you could be free of these fools forever, and you could join the winning side. Classic Thamerite supervillain pitch. And I was so tempted And then one of the other players said, "You do know that since you're not a caster, you can't actually use it." And I went, "Fuck it, I'm handing in the grenade." With the pin pulled out.
Nice.
Laughing.
Yep. Always a good idea.
I didn't survive, but the others did.
One of my aims in how to put this? One of my aims in RPGs is I desperately try whatever method I can not to just kill the players. And I found that a real problem with Shadowrun.
Oh god, I've got a whole thesis chapter that's about this and about the fetish for death as a measure of difficulty in RPGs and the sort of fascination with killing players and the adversarial GM. And if I had the right, I don't have the file open and it's going to take a while to chug its way up. But I've got, there's a bunch of people that have specifically dug into the problem of the TPK and of player death. And it's the guy I know where I was going. It's the bloke that wrote My Life with Master. The specific thing he wanted to do with that was to defer character death until the end, no matter what. You might roll something that said you're going to die, but you don't die now, you die. It just means that you're living on borrowed time until there's a good moment for you to die.
Okay.
And that really interests me as a mechanic, because it avoids that sort of, this was a random encounter, I rolled a Winter Wolf, 2 of you were dead in the first round. Phenomenon.
My aim for every encounter that the players have, my aim is either it must advance the story, or they must feel like they've got out by the skin of their teeth.
Yes, I agree. I've just also absolutely frozen in the neck. That hurts.
Okay, do you want me to leave you so you can go and take some painkillers?
I don't know. It's nice talking to you. It's not like I'm going to be able to do much else with this hand. It's just I moved slightly and pain just blossomed. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's sort of that's the actual goal is not to ascertain with fairness whether the players succeed or fail. It's to make them feel like they only just got away with that.
Yeah,
by whatever means necessary.
I mean, the last campaign we had, I literally had to sit there for about a good 30 seconds mid-combat thinking, I know what I've just rolled. I know what your health is. I don't want to fudge the numbers. How do I work myself out of this? It's when and then I remembered that there was a player who wasn't there who had the ability to basically temporarily stop people from dying, an ability called Stabilize.
Yeah.
But they were currently stabilizing someone in a back room, but it was an NPC they were trying to get information from.
Yeah.
And I kind of made an executive decision and went, okay, she swaps from doing that to saving your life.
Because you're more important.
Yeah. So they didn't get the information, but they had a caster who was just there in a pool of blood going, ow, rather than in chunky pieces.
Because... You know what helps there? What really helps there? Meta currency. Fate points, fortune points. That's something, again, so the IKRPG is really good at that with the whole you can spend a penny to half your damage.
Yeah.
Woofrup does it really well because the guidance on their fate points is you spend it. It does not mean you survive for one more round. You are still taken out. You're just not dead.
Yeah.
And you get sort of 3 or 4 near misses throughout a campaign. And I tend to find that works. Because what that does is, it puts the responsibility into the hands of the player. You don't have to sit there and decide, how am I going to fudge this? You can just say, right, this will kill you. You've got 2 fate points left. Do you want to use one of them? And it moves the burden, and it places the agency on the player. And I love meta currencies.
It's something I've kind of got to... I'm trying to work into the RPG I'm working on at the moment. Because I'm working on a homebrew, not as a kind of, I want to release this to the world and make money. It's more of a kind of, I want this so I can have a system to run that's, I know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, that's how I got started as well. Now bloody look at me.
You've worked yourself into a terrible position, sir.
Yeah, a terrible position where I get given money to help people run games better. What a fucking life.
Yeah, that is the point. I'm sorry there's someone else on you who's being a DM for money, but I can't remember who it was now.
Do you know what? I'm so glad that's taken off, and I hate
Hello?
that I don't have the balls to do it myself. I've been doing it for free for so long that I don't really have the cojones to suddenly start charging.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because obviously it's a service that people want.
Yeah, that's it, and it is also a shitload of work. Like, I'm not kidding when I say a good campaign. Speaking as someone who's written a short novel and run several RPG campaigns, the only reason the RPG campaign is slightly easier is because other people make up the dialogue for me.
Yeah,
that's the only practical difference in terms of the amount of work involved.
Oh yeah, I mean the first. I mean, I ran a campaign in Fate, which is I do enjoy it as a system.
Fate's good. I love Fate.
It's very much more freeform. Like, yes, I can deal with this, but I mean, I went very much overboard with the prep there. I mean, I looked into a whole load of like, okay, the Aztec civilization, where could they go from where they were? What technologies do they have access to? What would they look like now? And kind of theoried all that out. Then looked into the history. It's like, okay, I want to feature a jade death mask because that looks like it's their bag. Oh, if they came from this area, then I could have that. And worked out like reams and reams of stuff that just wasn't used. It fulfilled my own like little mental playground.
Yeah, like the same thing happens to me every time I run World of Darkness because I generally run historical. No, even when I'm running modern, because like the first thing I do is go off and research the area so that I don't have to make shit up.
Yeah.
And so I often go off on this sort of snowball of the last time I ended up going to Venice for a week, partly for an academic conference, but also because I wanted to get a shitload of street photography done. Because I wanted references for an RPG campaign that might get turned into a by night book at some point.
Okay.
I thought, yeah, I tend to go a bit hard with this. It's funny you should mention Fate because one of the things that I want to work on down the line is I know an illustrator who wants to do a sort of post Shadowrun game. He describes it as like Shadowrun but without all the creepy racist shit and just done for the aesthetic.
Fair enough, yeah.
And he wants to do it in Savage Worlds. You know, he said he wants to do it in Savage Worlds, but I said, well, why not make it? Why not go beyond that? Like, well, like I can happily sit down and I can stat things up for you and help you write this for Savage Worlds, Fate, and let's do Powered by the Apocalypse because that's big at the moment. Maybe D20 Modern as well, just because some bugger always wants it. And it's that same kind of thing. It's sort of here's a setting, and here's 4 ways you can run it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you're going to pick Fate, it doesn't really matter what the original thing was written for, as long as you've got roughly some idea of how powerful something should be.
You can
run it.
Yeah, that's kind of it. You know, that's why I pitched Fate because like Ronan knows Savage Worlds well enough that he can describe things in Savage Worlds terms, and then I can sort of butt them sideways into these other systems. And yeah, I find with Fate that it works as if you have a lot of rules like RPGs work if you already have a very clear idea coming in of what these characters are capable of,
and
what their world will allow. It's not so great as sort of I wouldn't define a fictional world in Fate because it's a bit too loosey goosey.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from with that one. Yeah. So, right. Anyway, I do need to be pretty much be going at this point.
No problem. I'm going to go and front load my face with some paint drugs. Can I ask for one small favour?
Go on.
If when you get around to editing, you can find a way to cut that flim flam where I don't know how many heists were originally in it, because that
sure
that makes me look bad, and it makes more importantly it makes the co-op look bad. So it's 25. Yeah, look, we had 25 in house before we even pitched it. So I genuinely at this stage don't know how many it's going to end up with. But
so there is an amount of editing that goes on with this. What I try and do is preserve as much of the original dialogue as I can. If that bit, that's fine. That can go.
Yeah.
The only other general editing that takes place is basically I normalize the volume so that I don't sound like I'm shouting over you and you're not shouting over me or whatever. And it truncates silences, so it makes everyone sound more witty than they are.
I do exactly the same thing for my video essays. All the bits where I'm just hanging there looking for a word.
Yeah.
Or all the bits where, because I'm frequently because I'm playing a game at the same time, all the bits where I go quiet because it's surprisingly hard to play Total War on very hard difficulty when you're also trying to discuss its generic coordinates.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, like that's totally that's totally fine. It's just like if I could ask for one thing to be redacted, can we get rid of the bit where I sound like I don't know what the structure of my own project is?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does stay in the live recording on YouTube. They get very few views.
Yeah.
But the one that goes out as part of the podcast stream, that's the edited version.
That's the one that I'm going to take back to co-op people and say, hey, I'm on this talking about our stuff.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine.
Please forgive me for sounding like a complete buffoon.
No worries. No, I'll get that edited out for you. It sometimes requires a little bit of creative reconstruction or like chopping for longer than intended.
No, that's fine. Like, it can end with, because I think at the end I said we pitched about 20 in-house before it even started, and that's like a reasonable answer to that question.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely fine. I'll make you look good.
Yeah, so. And at least like don't make me look like I don't know the project. I'm fine with sounding like a cretin with everything else I said.
Look, I'll give you one example of what I did for John Webb once in time long ago. So John Webb came on for an episode that was for beginners, and I
remember this one because I played this one to Lawrence when he was trying to get into the game.
He went through I think how to start painting. Now, what a lot of people don't realize about that segment was that's completely out of order, because John started with saying, oh, you should do this. They went, actually, no, you should start with this. Then returned to the original thread, diverted somewhere else, and then came back again. I took out all those individual bits and re-spliced them so that they were in the proper order. And I asked people, see if you can figure out what part of that episode isn't like in the right order. No one got it.
The only reason that I don't do that on video essays is because if I get the chance, I write a script. And what I generally do is do the gameplay and then time the script to match it because I'm really lazy. But I've had to do that with gameplay footage before, where I've had to just I've sat there and gone, see if you can spot. So there are 4 hastily disguised jump cuts in this video.
Yeah.
A prize to anyone who spots them all.
Cool. Right. Anyway, I'm going to have to be off, so I shall say it's been lovely talking to you.
Yeah.
And we'll try and get this out as soon as we can.
Yep, and I can't wait for episode 100. My God, it's been so long.
It's taken a while. Okay, cool. Take care.